Alright everyone, welcome back to part 2 of the money series. So when it comes to contracts and having talks with clients, producers, whatever, you always need to be careful because there potentially can always be someone who could take advantage of you. What I personally find even more important that you don't let yourself talk in any type of weird payment contracts where you have to make the work and then you have to wait for 30 more days until you get paid. So always make sure that everything is written down in the contract. Some companies or some studios, some projects pay also on behalf of the project. Make sure to talk with the people, communicate it, and also ask maybe to get a certain amount before. So here's the next question to ask. How to make sure that no company or client takes any advantage of you?
Personally, when it came to contracts and stuff like that, making sure people aren't taking advantage of me, the main thing I was always looking for in a contract is anything that basically existed above and beyond like the work time that I would be doing for them. So anytime there's anything in a contract that has to do with, the future, things that might happen down the road, like things, don't do this other thing for like a year, or we have like exclusive rights like above and beyond, the time required of you. I always thought that was the most important thing to look for. I don't want there to be any catches that extend, above and beyond that brief time I'll be doing work for them. I think the other thing, and this goes back into the daily hourly rate, but one certainly very important thing to always remember when forming some kind of contract, even if it's just an agreement between parties, the number of revisions that you're willing to do should be decided ahead of time for, to be included in the price. You can always add stipulations, to go above and beyond. If they need more revisions, you can have a set price for further revisions, but usually it's nice to include 2 revisions in any type of work you're doing as an artist, and include that in part of the price. Keep it in mind for yourself because you should be factoring in the potential time spent doing revisions as part of your overall fee and everything, and make sure you agree upon that, because otherwise you'll get clients that just want to keep coming back to you and saying, hey, I decided I want this a bit differently. Can we do that differently? And then next week it's like, you know what? I kind of want to go a different direction with this. And they'll just kind of keep dragging it out as much as they can. So it's very important to set it like that. It also will help the client be more engaged with their criticism. If they know they have this ticking timer of only 2 revisions, you're more likely to get an actual good feedback of okay, let me use one of these revisions because I want this to be different and I want this to be different. And I just kind of want to really be clear about what I want, rather than just knowing that they'll have infinite revisions and then they'll be kind of unsure of how to engage with you and maybe being like, I kind of want this a little bit more blue and I want this a little bigger and this and that. And they'll be very kind of passive, and you'll wind up going back and forth and back and forth. So revisions are a huge part of the overall client interaction.
All right, second question. How do you ensure that a client or company is not taking advantage of you? I personally don't think I've ever had a situation where someone has taken advantage of me in the sense that they screwed me or lied to me in a contract or didn't honor something. I really haven't had anything like that. Maybe one, but the stakes were so low that it really didn't matter. I unfortunately have very little experience with taking amateur contracts from clients. I don't do a lot of personal commission work for individuals or anything like that. I'm always working with companies and corporations. So their contracts are pretty standard, I would say. They don't do there's not a lot of weird, sloppy language or anything like that. They're very clear and straightforward. Again, I think it's more likely that you get taken advantage of by a company because you have low self-esteem, you don't value your work highly enough, so you don't pitch for nearly enough money and you're not willing to negotiate. Then you do that job for a year and you feel like you're being taken advantage of by these malicious people. No, you just didn't advocate for yourself. And you never went for the gusto and pitched high. You put yourself in the situation where you have allowed yourself to be taken advantage of. That said, to protect yourself from real malicious people out there, if you do find you need to create custom contracts with clients very often, I would have a lawyer review things. Other artists, I don't think, are really the best people to recommend to help you with that kind of thing. If I found myself in a situation where I was like, oh my God, I had to provide clients with a contract 8 times this year, I would just get a lawyer and I would have them tell me how to do it. And as to payment rules, yeah, half up front usually works very well. Just be insistent. Don't extend anything to the client until you have received the half up front, right? It's not a good idea to sort of try to smooth the situation over by starting to send sketches and drawings and using that to try to make them feel comfortable sending half up front. Just get half up front and then start working. That's usually the best protection. And then get your final half before you send final files, before you send full res files or PSDs or anything like that. There's also other payment schedules like net 30 or net 90, where the client has 30 days to pay you after completion, 90 days to pay you after completion. Just stay on top of them and don't be afraid to check in and ask questions. People need reminders.
General things, thoughts, or tips artists should consider when interacting with clients regarding proper payment. In general, I think the biggest thing to remember when interacting with a client is that it is a negotiation. They will always try to get, as much out of you as they can at the start. And there is kind of an expectation that you will come back and, revise things. And that's perfectly acceptable. I know so many artists, whether it comes to even doing like video ads on YouTube or doing client work, but they treat the offer as if that is like set in stone and they can't adjust it. If you don't like something in the contract agreement, in whatever like minor thing about it that you're not into, just change it. Ask them, tell them like, yeah, I'll do it, but I want this change and that change and this change to the contract or whatever. You have a lot of power to negotiate. And you should always engage with that negotiating power. Don't just let them dictate terms and then you just decide yes or no. No, like come back and say, yes, if we do it this way, or, no, I'm not gonna do that because I don't like this part and that part in the contract. Negotiating is important. You should always negotiate. If they're like just eagerly offering you something, you should keep in mind that it's probably not the best deal for you. Always negotiate a little bit. That's generally what you should expect. That's what they will do. So you should do the same thing too. The main thing I have to deal with these days is like YouTube advertisers and stuff, more so than like art clients. But I find it's the exact same thing. They will take as much advantage of you as they can. They will always come in, with a contract that, just gives themselves a lot of perks and exclusivity. And it's up to you as the person being hired to negotiate that, make changes to it, state your demands. It's completely fine. Don't get taken advantage of because you're like a little bit hesitant to, speak up for what you think you should get.
And this was actually advice that our teacher gave us at Art Center. And it's like, if you don't want to do a job and you have other jobs available, you might as well ask that job for a ridiculous amount of money and see what happens. Like, how much would it make it worth your while? And so I remember one gig, I didn't want to do it and asked for like $800 a day or something because I'm like, they're definitely going to say no. And unfortunately, but also fortunately, they said yes. And so it was a 2-week gig, and yeah, I hated that project so much. It was like some motion design concepts for theme park industry, museum experience thing. Never want to do that ever again. Okay, so how do you make sure a client or company isn't taking advantage of you? Well, if I'm about to join a project, I'd first ask around about it. Do I have any friends or contacts who are familiar with the company? If so, obviously talk to them. Get a lot of opinions. And sometimes my friends will say, yeah, they're kind of a small company, so they can't pay too much, but they're great to work with. And I'll be like, okay, cool, I'll go for the gig. Other times they'll say, yeah, they have a ridiculously high budget. Charge them like crazy, go for it. And that would be nice too. But other than that, I don't really know how else to make sure I'm not being taken advantage of. Also, after doing a lot of gigs, you begin to gauge how much of your effort and your energy is worth, so you don't want to say yes to something that you'd put so much effort into without getting paid enough for your own rent. Regarding interacting with clients' proper payment, if anything, just make sure you're aware of exactly how much you're going to be paid and by when. and make sure that's clearly stated in the contract. And also don't be afraid to negotiate on behalf of what you want based on the energy and effort that you're going to put in. And it's also always okay to say no. They want you for your work. So the ball is actually in your court. All right, hope that was helpful.
Here's the third question. Are there any general things, thoughts, or tips artists should consider when interacting with clients regarding proper payment? Usually when you're negotiating with a client, you are dealing with someone whose job it is to keep prices down. So whether that's an art director who's very close to creative, or if you're talking with an HR manager or something like that, everybody is just a person and they will present themselves as a person and things like that. But for their job, they are supposed to keep things within budget. And most people above them hope that they do that pretty aggressively. Absolutely ask for more than you want. Know where you're gonna get negotiated down to. But everyone needs to become comfortable with highballing. And if you offer your rate and the person just takes it and there doesn't seem to be any pain to it, that's usually a bad sign. That means that you're not charging enough. It's really hard to give particular numbers because every industry is different, right? If you're working for individual personal clients, of course they're going to pay you less. If you're working for companies, most companies are going to pay you several times what a personal client can pay you. And even within the world of companies, all the different markets have different amounts that they can handle, right? So something like advertising might be near the very top. You as an artist, you really can't imagine the budgets on advertising campaigns. And you really should be charging and pitching for way more than you are used to hearing if you're in the advertising world. 2, 3, 4 times as much as you would charge a client in video games or something like that. So those differences are tremendous. The markets are very, very different. Always ask for more than you want. Know that it's the other person's job to try to keep that price down. So don't take it personally or get offended when they do negotiate with you, when they try to move things left or right. Just left, just lower. That's where they're going to move it. And have built in this extra slack so that you can wind up working for a rate that makes you feel comfortable. Always go higher and advocate for yourself. Tell people honestly how you feel about the monetary situation. If the number goes too low, don't commit yourself to that. It's gonna make you very unhappy. At least tell them before you accept it, like, I really find this uncomfortably low. And on the other hand, if they lower the rate and you decide to take it because you're really excited for the project, tell them that too. It's okay to be honest, but start setting honest expectations for these clients about what you like and do not like. It makes things clearer as the relationship goes forward. You will come to appreciate that when you've been working for these people for years, which hopefully you will. So yeah, advocate for yourself and be confident and go high. What would I recommend to others? Know what you need. And some people are going to have high demands of what they need for a rate because of their life situation. And other people, let's say people who are financially independent, they're gonna have very low demands. So know what you need personally, what your priorities are. Is the money the priority or is the career the priority and getting a foot in the door, whatever? I understand that everybody's gonna need to start from a different place. Beginners, people trying to break in, it makes sense that they're gonna have really, really low rates. But I would, in general, recommend be aggressive with pushing your rate. I would recommend for anyone, try to get up to $65 USD as fast as you can. That's not high. That's not a good rate, especially if you're doing freelance, right? Or a high rate, especially if you're doing freelance. Once you take out taxes, all the problems of not working a lot of the time as a freelancer, that's really a benchmark number where it's like you could live like this. Whatever you need to do to get in, and then set a first goal to get to $65 USD as fast as you can, right? Get enough clout, get enough reputation, get enough clients that you can get to that number. That would need to be adjusted, right? That number seems to be an area where like you're not struggling in the United States. If you live in another place, you need to sort of do your own calculations for 65 USD, looks like in your country, but Try to get there very quickly. And then once you're there, you should try to push up to a significantly higher day rate as fast as you can, or much higher hourly rate. Just for people who have no idea, like, especially if you're doing freelance, you should try to get up to, start punching up and try to get up to $100 an hour. If you're doing a day rate, try to hit $1,000 a day. Maybe, you know, it's not pie in the sky to try to get $1,500 a day, all USD, and fight for it. If that sounds like a lot to you as a beginner when you hear that number, remember, freelance is a very hard lifestyle, and you will spend huge portions of the year not working. So those high numbers are to make it possible to live like a normal human being through the times where there's just no jobs coming. And you can make adjustments for full-time work, things with benefits and things like that. Those numbers are obviously going to look lower, but don't do a super difficult high-end creative job like being an artist or a designer for cheap. It's not worth it. It's really not worth it. You should be paid respectably for that role. Thanks, Janusz.
I really, really hope that this short money series was helpful and informative for you. Please let me know, give me a feedback in the comments. Was it informative? Are there things you want to know more about? Also, again, a big thank you to Steven, Sinix, and Ahmed. Please make sure to check out their YouTube channels. I will put everything in the description below. Also, if you want to support any further video productions like this one, you only have to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends if you find this content useful. Thank you for watching. I wish you a wonderful day and see you in the next episode. Ciao, ciao.